This one's a bit of an oddity. This is a Columbus delay pedal, which I'm just going to remove everything from to turn it over because it's in a bit of a tangle. This is one of those things that's just been kicking around in the bottom of a drawer forever. I think it was passed to me a few years ago by a friend, and as far as we knew it was completely dead. Seems to be made around 1990, going by some of the markings on the chips. And I was tidying up today and I stumbled across it just kicking around in the bottom of a drawer. And I thought, well, while I've got everything on, I've got the scope on, why don't I just try powering it up and just see if there's any signs of life around some of these 74 series chips at the bottom, just to see if we've got a clock running or anything like that. And I've no idea what I did, but I had an adapter plugged in the side just for a ground reference for my scope clip, and the LED came on, and that's the first time I've ever had any sign of life from this at all. I sprayed out the jacks. I think there's a switching contact inside the jack socket on the input side, as a lot of these guitar pedals do, to save the battery. Obviously this is plugged in for DC power at the moment. But I found a clock signal on the scope and it lit up. So I thought, well, I'll plug something into it and plug some headphones to the output just to see if there's any sign of output at all. And it seems to be passing a dry signal, although not in great quality. It's a bit noisy, and that could be to do with the fact that there's supposed to be a ground plane on the bottom, and all I seem to have got left is this plastic base and no screws anymore. So if we get this working, I may have to fashion a shield, which is easily done, and find some screws for this if I can get it going. But I just thought this would be interesting to try and figure out what's going on. Now that I've got lights on it, at least, it's worth pursuing. So it's passing dry signal, but no effect at all. It's a bit of a difficult thing to show inside because due to its construction, there's a ribbon connector, well, a ribbon cable that's actually soldered in onto two circuit boards here. What I may have to do is remove these knobs and then actually remove the board from the bottom to be able to get to it a bit better. But this ribbon cable is basically holding the two R's together, so I don't think this will stand too much pulling on it really. But inside, from first impressions, we seem to have a few 74 series chips which are probably shift registers. I'm not sure until I look them up. There's a Signetics chip at the top which maybe is an NE5, what is that, a 570, so that could be some sort of counter or timer chip. And there is a little JRC op amp, and that is a, what is that, it's a bit hard to see, a 4558 op amp. And there's a little LM series there, that's probably in another little amplifier. We've got a Sharp 21256-12 chip, which is most likely RAM, and the brains of it all seems to be a Mitsubishi chip, and I'm going to look all of these up because I think that's probably the main delay line processor, and probably has DAC and ADC built on there as well. I can't see, apart from discrete transistors, any other chips, so that's got to have all the conversion built in there as well. Okay, so there was actually a screw missing, so someone's been in this before, but I managed to remove a couple of screws and really easily get the top board out. Now it's starting to look a little bit like one of those teenage engineering OP things. There's a couple of hidden pots at the top, just little hidden trimmers that probably fine-tune the delay time and the maybe the mixing. I'm not sure. It's probably more to do with the delay timers. Just looking on the top, it's the usual affair. We've got a delay level, which will just be a mixer, a feedback control, a time control which is continuously variable, and then a range, short, medium or long, switch. Alright, so I've looked up all the chips that are on this board, and I'm going to start at the top here. The NE570N isn't a counter at all, it's actually a compander. It's basically the gain control. that would drive the op amp, which is the next one, the 4558. So I think this will be to balance the mix control and then the input and output balance as well. The LM311N again is not an amp chip like I thought, it's a comparator, and that forms part of the digital circuit that is all at the bottom here. We've got three 74 series chips. The 74HC386AP is a quad exclusive OR gate. The 74HC74D at the bottom here is a flip-flop, and the 74HC00D here is a NAND gate. I was right about the little sharp chip there. It's a 256 kilobit DRAM, and the Mitsubishi chip is a self-contained digital echo processor. So this has actually got a digital to analog and analog to digital converter all built in, and then it uses external comparator and an external RAM, and the logic chip just manages the data stream from what I can gather, because it's I think 8 pins of address on this one, and the data in and data out is on a single serial line. So before I jump into any of that complicated stuff about measuring around chips, it does help to look on the other side of the board. There's something really odd going on here. If I can just use something to point at this. There's a missing trace just coming off of this first pin. It seems to have been ripped off the board, and there's this sort of terribly done bodge that's connecting the pin, and there's a broken ground trace. So I'm not sure what on earth's going on here, whether someone's attempted to pull this switch off. It doesn't look like a factory thing, because it just looks it just looks terrible. I can't think why on earth that would look like that. I'm going to trace the other side and see what that should connect to, and see what's going on there, because I was just in the process of just checking continuity of these pins, and then I figured it would actually be easier just to flip the board over and measure from the actual pins on the side rather than trying to get into the wiring. And yeah, I spotted this. So obviously there's no continuity from this ground plane here, it's broken here, and then there's this bizarre bodge going on. I think I'm going to try and take this apart and see if I can get a clearer impression of how this track should work, and then we'll see what we can do with this. It may even fix it, who knows. Okay, that's cleaned this up a little bit. I've removed that awful bodge. I can now see that this is just a continuation of a ground plane into here. It's only where one of the screws comes through, but it doesn't actually make any connection here because it's masked off. There's no metal plate on the back of this that it gets pushed to or anything like that, because it's just into the plastic casing. So this side shouldn't be an issue. I'm going to replace the wire that was here, well, I say wire, the abortion that was there, with a little tiny wire, and then we'll see if that makes any difference. That seems to come into the exclusive OR gate down at the side, so let's try that, see if it makes any difference at all. Alright, so this is really interesting. It works. What I've ended up doing is replacing the bodge on the back of this board here, and also these two pots, I noticed they were turned to their opposite extremes, which I thought was a bit weird. When I first connected it back up after doing the little soldering job on the back, I could play with the feedback control, so I could get it to feed back just with a bare wire on the input, just with some interference. And what I ended up doing was turning one of these pots to make the time pot work. This seems to be a kind of limiter for the time pot, and this one seems to be a limiter for the feedback, to kind of limit the amount of self-oscillation that will go on. So this was turned round to the extreme that the time pot did nothing. It was just clamped completely. So after turning this, the time control now works. I've sprayed out all the pots and tried to spray out the switch. I think it's relatively sealed, so I have trouble getting to that. But now it seems to be working. I've connected a very advanced signal generator, as you can see, into this, and if I set the zoom rolling, I'll take a little bit of this that's running out. The delay level would be better if it was a mix control rather than just a delay level control, because you can't seem to crank it very loud over the clean input. I prefer if that was a kind of wet dry control, so I may be able to make some modification there. And a couple of the sockets and such are a little bit crusty, so I may just spray those out. And then I've got to make a standoff for the switch, because it doesn't actually reach the pedal, so something must have been in the top of that, and it's over the course of time gone missing, so I've got to fashion something to make that work. But I've made it work. This clock, this pot here, by the way, seems to be a master clock control. If I dial that right back, I can get an extremely fast clock on it. So I've been having a little play with that. I may even break this out to an external control, but I'm getting the feeling that I should maybe add a couple of little bits to this now. But it's brilliant that it works from just a piece of shit that I've pulled out of the bottom of a drawer. I've now got it going.